So first things first. Yes, obviously, I moved to France for a girl. But as the French pop song goes,
Les histoires d'amour finissent mal en général.
love stories end poorly for the most part. And after we broke up, a funny thing happened, and I decided to stay. And with that one decision, I actively made my life much harder than it needed to be. I mean, at first, you miss things, like gas station hot dogs and Denny's. And people too, I guess. I mean, sure you miss your mom, but nothing really prepares you to never again be able to mop up your hangover with a Grand Slam breakfast at 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's not just the moons over my hammy. France doesn't do breakfast in restaurants at all. No diners, no greasy spoons. You quickly find out that restaurants are for lunch and dinner, and all you're getting for breakfast is croissants and espresso. Then you realize that you've got bigger problems, like being able to talk to people. And don't get me wrong, I learned French well, and people here consider me completely fluent. But there's always something missing. It can be an obscure cultural reference, or just the subtlety to effectively express complex ideas the way you can in your mother language. I mean, anybody can order croissants and an espresso, but it's a little bit more complicated to discuss Plato in a foreign language. My last year in college, there was this German student, Ingemar, and he was working as a visiting TA. And I remember my first impression of him was that he was kind of simple. And I think this was based on the fact that he was kind of shy to speak, and jovial, and he was kind of clumsy in English. Now, of course, he was a PhD student working on his dissertation in comparative religion in a different country. So he was probably no slouch. And yet, kind of intuitively or instinctively, I just never gave him credit for this being his second or third language. And then one day I realized, I'm that guy. I'm Ingemar. This is an Ingemar situation. When I make 6th grade mistakes in French grammar, French people naturally assume that I have a 6th grade level in everything. And that can be frustrating. I'm also guessing that it's not great for a job interview. So maybe it's no coincidence that I never really had a stable job in France until I created my own company. So work has been hard at times. But there are, of course, a lot of things that I love about France and that make my life easier, like the peace of mind of free healthcare or the robust unemployment and social security systems. But I didn't stay in France for those reasons, or the wine, or Paris, or whatever else it is that people romanticize. In a way, I think it's precisely because of some of the discomfort of being a foreigner that I ended up falling in love with living in a country that's not my own, and ultimately ended up staying. You see, discomfort is a kind of stimulus. Novelty is stimulus. And the mundane difference of everyday things is stimulus. And so basically, I think I enjoy this life because I find it stimulating. Imagine you're trying to take a nap, and these annoying people just keep poking you and poking you. And it doesn't hurt, but it makes it impossible to get to sleep. Now, that's what my experience is like. All of the constant stimulus makes it impossible for me to sleep through my life. I mean, except when I'm sleeping. Well, you don't understand what I mean. Sure, some of it's annoying, like when people assume you're an idiot because you don't know what the gender for the word tire is. But some of it's amazing. And most of it is just incredibly mundane and ubiquitous and subtle. There's this concept called the platonic ideal, which is the idea that each object is a copy of the ideal form of that object. So each chair is an imperfect copy of the ideal or perfect chair. When applied to human psychology, it's the idea that each of us have our own ideals for every object based on our own experience. So if I say building, for example, maybe you imagine a certain structure or neighborhood in the town that you grew up in. In any case, if you're an American, your platonic ideal, what your brain is expecting to see when I say the word building, is likely closer to this than to this. We each have platonic ideals, or these ingrained expectations, for everything. And when what we see every day in our world and our lives perfectly aligns with those expectations, with those ideals, well, then we can start to kind of sleepwalk through our lives, and we stop noticing the things around us. And living in France, my reality and those expectations are constantly just a little bit misaligned. This is my toaster. It's got one long slot for baguettes instead of two for sliced bread. This is a window. It doesn't slide up and down, but opens out like that. And there's no screen, winter or summer. And this is my toilet. It's got two buttons, for a big or a little flush. I only figured out how it works very recently. Now let me be clear. None of this makes my life any easier. I mean, I just learned how to properly flush a toilet. But I guess I find meaning in this constant stimulus of everyday things and the obligation to never stop learning how to flush the toilet. Of course, at some point, it stops being a choice. After more than 20 years in France, I've started my company, I've built a house, and I've raised my kids here. This is just where I live, even if I may never get used to my toaster or the fact that they don't sell hot dogs at the gas station. Please take a second to hit that like button if you've enjoyed this video. You can subscribe to my channel up here, and there'll be another video up there. Down in the comment section, I'll put a link if you want to support this channel by becoming a patron. This video is over now, and you should go now so that I can put on some more clothes.